I'm Beetle with the Shmoo Group. This is our fearless leader who doesn't know how to work a wireless microphone.
Check, check. Oh, there we go. I'm Bruce Potter with the Shmoo Group. It's blindingly bright up here, and it's Thursday morning in Vegas, so I'm going to wear shades for a while. So I can't recognize anybody right now because the glare is outstanding. But thanks for showing up so early.
Yeah, that's really cool because I'm still feeling last night a bit. This is a presentation entitled Rogue Squadron. Rogue Squadron is actually a twofold kind of concept. You'll find out a little bit later. It's kind of nifty, I think. We're talking about evil twin access points, and we'll rant about that in just a minute. 802.11 intelligence, radical radius, and wireless weaponry for Windows. Like I said, we're with the Shmoo Group, and we do a few wireless things here and there. So here's an overview of what we're talking about. Wi-Fi threats from old to fucking old. I was wondering when I was going to get to dropping F-bombs, but I figured it'd be on slide 1 or slide 2, somewhere around there.
So this mic has to boot, apparently.
Oh.
So you turn it on, and there's some processor internal that is booting, so I'm probably trying to make snide comments, and I can't. So Beetle drops the F-bomb every once in a while. I'm just going to disavow myself of that because, well, I'm professionally employed and things of that nature, and I think my employer might be in the audience somewhere. So I try not to use the F-bomb too much, although I think there's a picture of me at Layer 1 flicking off the entire audience that's circulating around the internet. So if you see that, it wasn't me. Just someone who looked a lot like me. But.
Yeah, we're definitely going to rant just a little bit at least about why this stuff is really old and why we really didn't expect any of this to actually get accepted at Black Hat. But we tried to add a little twist in it to actually make it a little fresh. We'll talk about rogue access points, basics to badass rogue access points. I'm going to introduce something that I talked about at Layer 1 called eat peeking. And I won't be able to give a demo of that. However, I will show you how the whole process works. You'll get to see really cool graphics and that sort of thing. We'll talk about two-factor terrorism, which in brief. Wireless weaponry for Windows. If you were at TourCon last year, you got to see some really cool things for Windows that I wrote that actually allow you to do interesting things with the wireless subsystem on Windows using WMI. We'll talk about AirSnar for Windows, and we'll also talk about Rogue Squadron, and you'll get more on that. We'll talk about Rogue Access Point Defense, so you'll hear a little bit more about Hotspot Defense Kit and how it's evolving, and then of course we'll just be blabbing here and there, and you can take what you want from this.
For the record, we have like 60-odd slides. You just spent a minute on the introduction.
Thanks.
So, no problem.
So why do we Wi-Fi? Who here has an open wireless network at home? An actual open wireless network? Go ahead, it's okay. You can admit it, man. Just say, I got an open wireless network at home. I'm Beetle, and I have an open wireless network at home.
Welcome, Beetle.
Who has an open wireless network at work? Yeah, do you know? Yeah, you don't know. You do, by the way. If you didn't know, you actually do. It's by some guy down the hallway or whatever. Here's the third bullet here. Crap. My TiVo can't do fucking WPA. All right, and neither can my PSP. Does it really matter? Do I need to actually protect my TiVo streams from the badass hacker that's going to download? Do I need to protect myself when I'm doing an ad hoc wipeout pure session with a buddy next to me with a PSP? Is it really that big of a deal? So some of this, we throw out this and we rant about wireless security, but some things really don't require that much security. I really don't care if somebody DOSes my wipeout pure session. They obviously have nothing better to do, right? This last point though, when and where should we be actually doing Wi-Fi, right? Coffee shops, yeah, cool, right? Airports, yeah, cool, right? Hospitals, banks, nuclear power plants. All right, so I got this from a trade rag that a buddy, Matt Fisher from, he said don't say where he comes from, but you know where he comes from. He's a really good guy. And he sent me this. He was like, you're not going to believe this. I'm like, oh, wow, it's an article on how they're deploying Wi-Fi, and all sorts of other wireless things, to include Zigbee, and you'll probably hear a few things about Zigbee as it becomes a little bit more prevalent. And I thought, yeah, that's really interesting. He was like, no. Take a closer look at the picture. Access point, right? A typical wireless access point at Comanche Peak. So far, Zima has installed monitoring devices on more than 50 pieces of critical equipment within Unit 2. Unit 2 must be Unit 2, What's really interesting, go ahead and kind of look at that access point IP address on the access point. Woohoo! Talk about OPSEC. I mean, that's just great. Not only do we have wireless, but if you get on the wireless network, here's the address space we're using internally. There you go. Whoop! this was interesting. Last October you had folks, still talking about how you secure wireless networks. There's 6 easy ways to secure your wireless network if you didn't know. And they include a lot of things that don't work at all. But this is what, the industry keeps saying, don't worry, you do this kind of stuff at home, you're fine. Don't worry, you do this kind of stuff even at work, you're fine. Here's 6 easy ways to secure. Let me tell you, securing a wireless network is not easy. Let's just get that out there. It's not easy at all. It actually takes, a degree in acronyms to figure out how the hell you're going to secure a wireless network. And this is what's interesting. Just this spring, rogue access point attacks emerged. Evil twin access points, that's what they're called now. But we were talking about this 2 years ago. What's wrong with us? Where are we failing here? Bruce, you want to round on that a bit? I mean, where did we go wrong?
I mean, this has been talked about for a long time. And we've talked about it prior to us. There are a lot of people talking about it, people writing papers about it, and everybody ignores the problem. All right? It's not the encryption on the wire that we need to worry about. WEP is broken, yeah, get over it. All right? Let's solve the real problems with wireless networking. Everybody in this room needs to be kind of an evangelist on their daily basis, right? Like we do security. We're paranoid, we're angry, let's go after the man. Come on, that's what Black Hat's all about, right? So you should leave here and tell people about the problems that are real in the world. You should talk about critical iOS problems. You should talk about rogue access point problems, because we don't want to give this talk next year. We'll submit it again in its same form. And if it gets accepted, we're not coming.
There's some key points here. One of the things that I've been really trying to harp on recently, security acronyms have taken precedence over proper implementation. People are talking about acronyms as a way of securing their networks as opposed to actually validating implementations. We use EAP. Great. How do you use it? We use a VPN. How the hell do you use it? Because VPNs, EAP, guess what? People have busted those left and right for years. Nice picture. Choose a mobile network with care. Choose a mobile network at random. It's the bad guy network, right? But seriously, how the fuck does the user know? How do they know they're on the good network? How do they know they're on the bad network? You want to disavow that one too, Ben?
I had nothing to do with that F-bomb.
So let's talk about Rogue Access Point 101. The traditional thought about rogue access points is that it's an unauthorized network backdoor. Your employee, because he's figured out how to actually set himself up a cool wireless network at home, says, man, this is easy. This is the bomb. And guess what? It's cheap now. It used to be $100 for an access point. They're free. You can actually just sign up for a DSL service these days, and they throw in the access point. Or, if you're really lucky, you go to Fry's and you get yourself an access point and then scope for a couple rebates. Access point was $30, rebate was $30. It's free! This stuff is so cheap, it's so ubiquitous at this point that people are just jacking these things in the corporate environment. Problem, right? And everybody's got to deal with it at this point. However, a new twist on rogue access points is using them as an attack vector. AirSnarf, which we showed off 2 years ago, basically, set yourself up an access point that's higher power, closer, and people will join it, give you all sorts of information. Let's look at this graphically. Access point, SSID of good guy, client comes in, SSID set to any, or it could actually be set to good guy. He associates the access point, good guy, his SSID effectively becomes good guy. However, bring in the closer or stronger access point, SSID of bad guy, client card associates there, and his SSID effectively becomes bad guy. This occurred without the user's knowledge as of Windows XP, pre-Service Pack 2. Service Pack 2 solves this, tells you when the SSID changes. Solves it. Yeah, so what if you're using the same SSID? They're like, oh yeah, but we can detect that you've got a different MAC address. What if you're forging the MAC address? And then I showed this off too, Black Hat Federal. I called it inverse war driving. And then all of a sudden, a lot of tools came out later, said, oh, this is how you do it. You look for people that are actually looking for wireless networks. You provide them the wireless network, they join you, and this is what happens. You Send over whatever it is that you like to send over, and blah, blah, blah. And you thought those guys like dual homed in the office that had like a modem and people were like, we're dialing him, we're bad. Now people are just driving by and sucking in your users. This is a screenshot of NetStumber running at Black Hat 2 years ago. These are all the Black Hat access points, blah, blah, blah. Here's one with its signal strength, negative 60 dB. Nice. If you're not familiar with dB or dBm and how you measure actual power with dB, every 3 dB increase or decrease is a 2 times increase or decrease in power, respectively. So when we decided to run a PDA at 100 milliwatts, negative 30 dB. That's why at Black Hat 2 years ago, everybody stood up from the wireless network and said, "Fuck! Where did www.girlsdothis.com go?" We really meant to provide internet access through the PDA, but we got a little busy. So let's talk about rogue AP attacks. When you want to choose your Wi-Fi weapon, you got normal gear running at about 25, 32 milliwatts, or 14 or 15 dBm. You've got Cisco gear running at 100 milliwatts, 20 dBm. You've got Cineo gear running at 200 milliwatts, 23 dBm. Throw on a directional antenna for 38 dBd total, 6 watts. 6 watts will win against 25 milliwatts every time. The rogue access point how-to. It's simple stuff, people. I mean, you're talking about creating a competing network, and you create all of the things that the people want on that network. You give it to them, they join, and then you steal information from them as they move through.
Actually, can I ask a question to be a little interactive this morning? How many people do wireless pen testing or have done a wireless pen test? All right. How many of you guys have cracked wet, and that was the way you're getting into networks? All right. How many people have stood up rogues and used that as a mechanism to get into networks? All right. It was just kind of a curiosity. I think that we have a mind share that, oh, we just go and crack web, and that's how you get in. And right now, it's getting harder and harder because people are using real ciphers now. But I got news. This is not, this still works.
So then I'm just going to mention badass backends and two-factor terrorism. So web-based authentication via wireless. This is what we're seeing. We're seeing an unholy marriage of technologies now. We're letting people authenticate to a network of some sort by providing a username and password through a web page. The web page that can be provided by anybody. And at this point, when we're talking about how people authenticate to their corporate networks, there are corporate networks that use a username and password, the username being, your username, and then the password being a form of two-factor authentication. Potentially secure ID, some other nice little random token that just jumps up and that's safe, right? We heard from Bruce Schneier earlier this spring, and people got all over him because he was poo-pooing all over two-factor. But he was right. When it comes to this, an unholy marriage of technology, two-factor doesn't save you at all. Because I can take your secure ID credentials and use them in real time thanks to backends that I have over EVDO or GPRS. I don't have to actually have your network connection. I don't actually have to have a hotspot's network connection. I have the internet with me all the time in my pocket. And so I can take your username and your password, that being that nice little token of yours, and use it in real time against the actual network that you wanted to get on. And you'll never know. And I'm on. And if it's your bank account, it's your bank account. So let's look at a badass rogue access point attack. It won't be that badass. I mean, it's real stupid, right? So first thing, set up an EVDO backend. That's just a PPP connection with an EVDO card.
Hey, make sure you use the smallest font possible.
Sorry, man.
This is where I try to get real nervous to see if we'll screw up the demo. That actually flustered him.
And because, this is another version of AirSnarf that's coming with Auditor. There's a version on Auditor right now. And let's go ahead and throw 200 milliwatts into a 1 watt amp and an 8 dB Omni antenna for about 9 watts. Now, if this works correctly, I should be able to, without killing myself. Go back over here real quick. Access point set up. Jesus. What have I done?
I don't know, but the animation's really hot.
Thanks, man. Making this too hard on myself. There we go.
He was preparing for this last night when I went out drinking, and he had just the bed was just full of gear. There's laptops and antennas. I'm thinking, is this really demoable? Like, you know, when you have that much gear in play, is this really something that we want to get in front of everybody and try? But man, he'll persevere. Like, you watch this, man. He will
I had
persevere.
5 demos, and Bruce is like, no, I'm sorry. I'm not going to even stand up there with you while you do something like that. That's not going to happen. All right, so generally, you go to like Google, and there's Google, right? So it's an access point, and it's providing me internet access. All great, all well and good. Looks beautiful. Could say Black Hat. Could say T-Mobile. Could say something else for the SSID, whatever. Right now it says AirSnarf. Pretty damn obvious, right? But we're transmitting at 9 watts. There's nobody else that's going to be able to stand up an access point called AirSnarf and be able to pull them over. I win right now. Now, let's see. What are we doing here? What are we playing with? Well, let's say we want to dynamically steal things from people. So how do we do that? Well, if somebody goes to PayPal, we give them this, right? So there you go. PayPal user, PayPal password, log in, right? It's really nice. Switch over, and as we're sitting here in real time, we're getting their username and their password and which site they were actually using it for. Pretty simple stuff, right? I give another example and show Hotmail, but it looks the same way. People are like, oh yeah, that's not going to fake anybody out. All right. That looks good, doesn't it? Would you fall for it? Beetle. Beetle's Gmail password. Now I'm being nice right here. I'm actually going to say splash screen, kindly redirecting you. Bang. I'm going to send you actually to Gmail. And I could log you in if I wanted to.
What kind of connection speeds are you getting with EVDO here?
Almost 1 megabit per second, actually.
So it's a mobile, 1 meg uplink that you can
they've actually done
anywhere.
Yeah, they've done actual 3G here in Vegas, DC, and San Diego, I think is the other third spot. Hey, all right, more cities are popping up all over the time. That's great. But you see that, right? That's how it works. And if I wanted to, I could be really mean. I could go Bank of America. I could do E-Trade. And I can make it look all seamless. And nobody's the wiser. Why does this work? Does anybody want, anybody want to throw it out there? Why does this work? It's the user. User and how they interact with these things. But there's somebody else that's in trouble here. Somebody else at fault. The website. Why is it that when I go to www.bankofamerica.com, or I go to www.gmail.com or etrade.com or paypal.com or hotmail.com, the first thing it does is redirect me. Redirects are commonplace. That's how the internet works now, right? I don't actually go to that.
That's how the web works. It's not the internet.
You're right, interweb.
Sorry.
I thought the web was the internet. But users are trained. Users are trained to actually accept this as standard practice. They think it's perfectly fine for them to go to the primary website and you go to www.hotmail.com, and where do you end up? Login 5 East passport.microsoft. Whatever the hell. That's normal, right? That's what's supposed to happen. So I can actually take core names, core actual websites, poses them, and then redirect you to whatever their normal redirect is, and it all looks legitimate. And that's one demo down.
Ooh. Wow. I lost a lot of money right there, by the way. I didn't think anyone were going to fly. So.
Yeah. No faith. No faith.
Hallelujah.
Slideshow. Back to the slideshow. So we can provide people with Hotmail, and they're owned. We can provide them with PayPal, owned, Twist, airports. Go to any airport, and there's a hotspot there. And who's it provided by? Who do you know? I mean, is it Boingo or T-Mobile, or is it Joe's hotspot these days? Who's actually there, and who do you trust? Owned as well. Rogue access points are not going away. Users are going to be users. They're going to give away information. They're going to fall victim to impersonators. If you didn't notice, phishing is on the rise. Identity theft on the rise.
All the kids are doing it these days.
And everybody has all of these extra wireless client profiles that they can get sucked in on.
I think you're leaving out one critical piece of accountability on this, and then it's all the software that lives between the user and the network. And we'll get into that in a bit, but he makes it sound like, I mean, users do have problems and all, but there's an extra, conspiracy in here, and that's the operating systems and the drivers are not doing a damn thing to let the users know that something strange is afoot.
Yes. And then you've got folks like Gartner telling you that this isn't a threat. This is overblown. The greatest rise in crime, okay, phishing and identity theft, paired with the greatest emergence of technology in terms of how people are using the internet. No problem in between, right? Gartner can blow us. So when I talk about 802.11 intelligence, it's not just the usernames and passwords that people are giving up. You can just sit there passively and watch people, obviously, and there's a ridiculous number of things that a Windows box will spew when it gets onto a network. Just a ridiculous number of things. Everything from domains, shares that they like, proxies that they use, any installed software that they have that loves to call home, and that includes all of their adware and spyware that's already on there and telling you exactly where you have to go in order to own them. Other preferred wireless networks that they're looking for. Are there other things that they're giving up? Yeah, probably. I won't go into more detail there. What about EAP secured wireless networks? EAP solves it, right? 802.1x solves this, right?
Hallelujah.
All your EAP, baby. Crap. This is an acronym bonanza. EAP MD5 challenge, EAP MS Chat V2, EAP GTC, EAP SIM, EAP TLS, EAP TTLS with MD5 challenge, GTC, MS Chat V2, PAP Chat et al. Thanks to Funk. Leap EAP Fast, thanks to Cisco. The first one being broken, the second one being broken in a certain instantiation. PEEP with MS Chat V2, MD5 challenge, GTC variants, all thanks to Microsoft. There's plenty of ways to screw this up. Plenty of ways. But first, let's just talk about EAP. EAP for dummies, this is how it works. There's a supplicant, user of the client, authentication server, that's the radius box, and the authenticator, that's the device in between the two, probably the access point. Authentication goes a little bit like this. You say, hey, I want to join the network, and they say, well, who the hell are you? And you respond back, well, this is me. Okay, I'll pass who this is me over to the radius server. They'll validate that. After they validate that, they allow you onto the network, give you some sort of dynamic key. Could be a static key. Rogue access points versus EAP security. EAP security really only comes into play when you're talking about the tunneled versions, the actual TLS versions that are sending usernames and passwords inside of a tunnel. Everything else, it's like an MD5 hash that actually flies across, or it's a username and password that flies across, something stupid. So unless they're actually tunneling the credentials, it's not secure, first of all. There's two basic goals when you're securing credential tunneled variants of EAP. You give the supplicant a way to authenticate to the authentication server so they don't go spilling their guts to everybody. And you create a secure tunnel so that the supplicant and authenticator can have a mechanism of exchanging information securely. However, if you introduce a rogue radius server into your rogue access point attack, you can use it against those different EAP protected networks that are misconfigured. Plenty of ways to screw it up. Like I said, free radius provides a simple, easy way, obviously, to do this. It allows for what I call EAP peeking. Here's an example of EAP TTLS. Actually, this is EAP TLS, which I like. EAP TLS assumes that you have certificates on both sides. You do mutual authentication. This involves PKI. We got that all right, didn't we? In the wired world, we've got PKI just solved. So I'm sure we're going to get it right in the wireless world, right? EAP TTLS example. This is interesting. It's kind of like how you associate to a secure web server. So they have a certificate, you don't. You set up an actual TLS session, secure tunnel is established, and then you pass your credentials over the secure tunnel. That sounds good. We're okay there, right? Here's a weakness. If you have a rogue access point come in with a rogue radius server, you disassociate the user, and now they authenticate and associate to you, and if they're not doing remote certificate checking and or they're allowing all certificate authorities as trusted, and you've bought your certificate from GeoTrust for $9, You can set up a secure tunnel with them, and then do they give you a username and password? Yep. Specifically with this. When you're using EAP in the form of PAP over TTLS, or EAP TTLS with PAP, you can actually get a username and password in the clear after they've associated to you, and they've got their nice little secure tunnel set up. So it's secure. It's secure that they're giving their credentials away to the bad guy. It's that secure. And if you want to look for targets, go ahead and look for them with Google. There's plenty of educational institutions out there that are using EAP, TTLS, and PAP as their authentication mechanism for everybody that's on the campus. And I'm sure all of the users are doing remote certificate checking. And I'm sure they've also added, that as a policy for like the campus. The problem here is the user has control of the configuration. The user's able to determine whether or not they're going to remote certificate check. So if they've misconfigured it wrong and or they don't give a shit, guess what? They're going to give away their username and password.
And again, just to give the user a little bit of a break here, there are implementations out there that can't do certificate checking to save the damn life anyway. So, you can put in a self-signed cert that doesn't have a valid root in a cache somewhere, and it'll still, everything just goes spanky clean, it's fine. And these are not like one-off weird implementations. There's some mainline implementations that will do this. So again, because I like to blame the software developer more than the user, I'll blame the code. I apologize to all the software engineers.
That's quite all right, bud. Thanks. EAP TTLS with PAP attack. This is how it looks like. Rogue access point comes in, disassociates the user. You learn your username and password. You copy it to your local EAP config. Immediately join the network. Instant. In fact, if you hit up a campus and there's 300 users on the access point, you disassociate all of them. They all give you their username and password within seconds. But here's a different type of vulnerability, because Microsoft has protected EAP. And protected EAP and its variant that uses MS Chat v2 must be secure, right? Unfortunately, if you do this, as in not validate the server certificate and or trust all certificate authorities, yes, you can attack PEEP. Protected EAP is vulnerable to this as well. And somebody's like, no, you can't do that. MS Chat v2, that solves it, because I'm never going to give you my whole username and password, so you can't figure it out. Wrong. Rogue access point comes in, disassociates the user. The first thing you learn instantly, the domain that they're using and their username. You disassociate the user, you seed your local password file with a bogus password, and you can continue to rotate through bogus passwords. Basically a dictionary attack. And guess what? Windows XP Service Pack 2, with protected EAP, not doing a remote server certificate check, will continually associate, and continually try to give you their password. And as long as you keep seeding your local password file with a dictionary, eventually when they successfully authenticate to you, guess what? You know the password. Protected EAP, vulnerable, using MS Chat v2, and not doing a certificate check. So let's talk about wireless weaponry for Windows. Because you can't do rogue access point attacks with like a Windows box, right? Wrong. So I wrote it up. AirSnarf for Windows, also known as Evil Twin Access Points for Dummies, because the reporters were saying, this is a sophisticated attack. Only a sophisticated hacker could do this. This is not a threat. Only really, really badasses can do this. Believe me, it's not that badass. So, run soft access point on your card, and somebody's like, you can't get soft AP anymore. It's interesting, but after that document came out, PCTEL seemed to pull their software from their site. You can't use soft AP anymore. You can't download it. If you want to buy it, you got to be somebody that's, a big corporation or something along those lines. Wrong. You can look for a nice little card called the CWC 854 from CNET. CWC 854, and it comes with soft AP software. Free. So you don't have to pay the $20 to PCTEL anyway to get soft AP. Treewalk DNS. Treewalk DNS provides local DNS cache poisoning, Apache for your web server. You're providing a network. And it's all there on one Windows box. It's that easy. Rogue Squadron. What is Rogue Squadron? Well, somebody said it was too difficult for them to run AirSnarf to demo, a rogue access point attack and or do the rogue access point attack on a pen test. It's too difficult to run a shell script. Okay? network cable.
What? Ethernet?
Yeah. Hang on. Right.
That's where I don't be helpful at all and trying to make him nervous.
Here. Thanks.
Sweet.
Switch over to here. Somebody's like, oh, he's still using Linux. Whatever.
All the cool kids are running the BSDs. Come on, BSD users.
Let's kill air snarf there.
Are you kidding me?
Make sure our EVDO connection is still up.
I want to go now.
So assuming that it's too hard to actually run a shell script in Linux to get this done, wouldn't it be nice if you just had something that was plug and play? Let's see here. There's our little network called Rogue Squadron. Oh, sorry about that, guys.
Hold your laptop up higher was the request.
That's going to solve
Trust
it right
us.
there. All right, so associate to the access point called Rogue Squadron here. And Firefox. Let's make sure I don't have anything cached here, because I know that's just going to kill everything.
There went all his porn.
No! Firefox. All right, so this is a network. And this is what it does. Regardless of where you want to go, Google, whatever it is, this is just like a T-Mobile hotspot, just like anybody else's hotspot. You get that redirect thing, right? It's like, I don't care where you want to go. I'm sorry, but you got to have a username and password to do this. Same thing applies. Username and password. I want to go to Google, so I'll give my, T-Mobile user, T-Mobile password, login, right? And then if it's really nice, it'll authenticate me and it'll let me use the internet, just like a hotspot will, just like a hotspot, right? And it is just like a hotspot because it's all running from an access point. The Linksys WRT54G now has custom firmware provided by the Shmoo Group. Rogue Squadron. Rogue Squadron is firmware that you could download onto any WRT54G. We had the hot Shmoo interns code this for us. And just like a WRT54G, when you install this, it acts just like a regular access point. It's all well and good. We replaced the Cisco logo with our own. I'm sure we're probably the next person to get sued after Mike. What is interesting about this, though, and this is based off of the EWRT firmware that is like a modification of the Linksys firmware that allows for a captive portal, which is NoCat. However, in the version of EWRT, there's no way to take a username and password. There's just a click on a login. However, in this case, we've hacked it up so that you can actually take a username and password, you can provide the redirect, you can let them onto the internet, all that grand stuff. And if you really want to see this, let's see. Yeah, actually doing something there would be good. Now everybody's like associated with the access point. Access point's like, oh my God, there's 50 users trying to SSH into me. And so there's a nice little, prompt that gets you into the actual access point. You go to the op directory. It's all resident. Cat your airsnarfs file. Bang, usernames and passwords. Usernames and passwords for all the sites that people are going to. Usernames and passwords for the ones that they tried to authenticate to you. It's your own hotspot. So it's not a bad hotspot. And if somebody wants to actually take the code and move it on to actually do real authentication, they can do that. Rogue Squadron. Or rogue access points for the masses, as we like to say.
I mean, just to drive the point home, because I'm not sure if it's just too early or everyone was totally not impressed by all that.
Nope.
Or maybe a little of both, really. you're aware that, we had the Air Snarf logo up there on the splash page just because we're not really in the game of going out and trying to be T-Mobile or be whatever, But it's a trivial thing for people to, set that up and make the HTML proper, And it's not like this was a lot of rocket science. I mean, Beetle's a smart guy. But, as we've been saying all along, the original Air Snarf was just a bunch of shell scripts, right? It wasn't rocket science. And this is just, it's packetized, it's nice, you can use it. And honestly, it makes a hell of a great little hotspot thing. If you're doing a community wireless network or something like that, you could actually pick this up and use this for that kind of purpose. But, effectively, you hook that thing up to an app, you set it next to T-Mobile, you let it rock and roll for a while. People, doing EVDO bridging, the whole deal.
Battery power them.
Yeah, battery power the sucker, and just, that's it. The user has no idea.
And they use WDS, so you can set up 1, 2, 3, all back into one uplink.
Your corporate user that's on the road, that's not anywhere near your office, has no earthly idea what's going on here. Your enterprise intrusion detection system isn't detecting a rogue access point. Okay? They're 1,000 miles from home getting owned, getting a cup of coffee. That's the threat to your enterprise.
I mean, this is the maximum that they can get as a regular user. I mean, now there have been some companies that have actually caught on, and Bruce will talk about it more. But I mean, before there was hotspot defense kit, I mean, this was it. You had to bring up a client utility to actually tell you what signal strength was, who you were actually associated to in terms of an actual hardware address, whether or not your signal to noise ratio was fluctuating greatly. Because I tell you what, when 9 watts comes online, signal goes through the roof, baby.
Is that still plugged in?
No. So Bruce is going to rant a little bit about defense.
Keep a wide berth from the antenna here.
It's off.
Oh, man, you gave me that look like it. All right. Now, so first of all, can I get a round of applause for Beetle's crazy PowerPoint film? I mean, considering he's not a professional consultant, he sure did have a hell of a lot of animation. So, props for that, man. I'd say I'd hire you, but I don't think never mind.
Too many F-bombs.
Yeah, exactly. Too many F-bombs to be a consultant. So what about defense? So, this is supposed to be the 0-day defense track. And I'll tell you right now, we don't have the defense tool finished yet. How many people are familiar with Hotspot DK, the Hotspot defense kit that we released at Black Hat Federal 2.5 years ago, or a year and a half ago, or some calculus? A few, 3 or 4, yeah. So we weren't very successful at pimping it out, it turns out. We're not really big into pimping our technology. We're big into telling you all about things and hoping other folks go forth and use it. What's really been frustrating about Hotspot DK or HSDK is that the technology that was in it, we BSD licensed and just said, anyone, vendors, pick it up, use it. Your users need help. And it wasn't until the last six months or so that even a handful of vendors started to pick up on this. So I'm going to try to talk through some of the defensive issues. Feel free to argue with me on some of this stuff. I feel pretty strongly about it. There's a lot of issues afoot. You can't deploy a wireless network and not have people who understand network engineering, security, user needs, the whole deal. This is a complicated problem. I've seen wireless networks fail because of lousy network engineering, not necessarily because of poor security practices. So it's just as important that you have mad network foo as you have mad security foo. We're going to talk about architecture and configuration. You can read. I'm not going to read it for you. So wireless architecture, there are a lot of options. Okay, there's a lot of vendors. Hallelujah, brother, there are vendors because there's money in wireless. I don't know if you hadn't figured that out yet, but there's a lot of people who ran to the marketplace a couple years ago trying to sell stuff. Now, in fairness, the last year has been a pretty big deal for the wireless security vendors out there because some of them really started to figure it out. People ran to market 3 years ago with product just trying to get it out there because it was the thing all the kids were doing it. There's money in it. Our cap VC says we have to do it, whatever. But some of these people are actually starting to have moderately robust products. So there is hope, but it's certainly not ubiquitous. So people like to talk about layered defense, OSI layers. I'm obviously not going to drill through that today. But some folks that I talk about wireless networks, they say, I'm just going to secure layer 2. That's my jam. I believe layer 2 and all this EAP stuff, that's the savior. And some people say, that's really complicated. I don't understand this alphabet soup. I can't spell EAP. So I'm just going to focus on layer 3. And some folks do both. So what's the right answer? Well, as usual, it depends. But I will say that just securing layer 3 is a really bad idea. If people don't want to attribute themselves or somehow be associated with this statement, feel free not to raise your hand. But how many people are willing to admit that they just use layer 3, i.e. like IPsec VPN or something to secure their wireless network? That's their primary mode of security. It's okay. There's a couple of hands. I'm familiar with a number of implementations as well that just use VPNs. They're certificate-based VPNs, bidirectional authentication, all kinds of that nonsense. Well, first of all, it doesn't do a lot to protect a client from layer 2 attacks. Like layer 2 attacks are still full-on fair game, right? If I have a wide-open layer 2 network and a really locked down layer 3 network where I'm doing this crazy IPsec stuff, I can still do rogue attacks. I may not be able to parlay that into higher level stuff, where I can get a web page on the user's screen and start to trick credentials out of them and things of that nature. But there's still stupid layer 2 tricks going on against the client. At that point, you're relying on the quality of your VPN software. If your VPN software can be tricked into not encrypting or just kind of giving up, or it's a split tunnel or whatever, you can usually do stupid nonsense to the client to display a page, or even skip displaying the page, just go own the box. Like, is it patched? No. Whoop, okay, it's mine now. Now I'm going to use that to jump into your enterprise. Hallelujah, brother. Okay? So that's a really bad situation to be in, and layer 3 protection doesn't necessarily isolate you from that. Also, it doesn't protect the infrastructure, right? So the infrastructure is still in play. You have an access point that's not technically a layer 3 device usually, it's just a bridge, and he's just sitting there waiting to get destroyed. And then you have bad network architectures that may exist behind that access point. I'm talking people leaking spanning tree out into the ether, okay? You go out to, go out on site, go to a friend's house, whatever, friends with spanning tree, that happens all the time.
CDP, baby.
So I need new friends, it turns out. You'll just see spanning tree leaking out. Like, hello, I'll be your root bridge. Give me all your VLANs, I own your network. Or at least everything in that switch fabric I can certainly have some fun with. CDP, Cisco Discovery Protocol, is awesome because you don't need to know a damn thing to build your network. If you buy a bunch of routers and switches and plug them together, it'll build a network for you, right? Like VLANs, like trunks will form between switches. Holy crap. I actually found one in an enterprise I worked in once. Like 2 switches, like there was a trunk between them that shouldn't have been there because CDP was on and said, you're a switch, I'm a switch. Foop, and it made a trunk. It started passing VLANs. I'm like, holy cow, that's really scary. There's a lot of things that CDP will force Cisco devices into doing just cause, not a good situation. Routing info will get leaked out, like OSPF. Why does the world need to see an OSPF update in the clear,
On the wireless network.
On the wireless network. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Shared LAN segments, Bob Fleck, who I don't think is here, and some other guys at Cigital released a paper a few years ago on ARP spoofing on wireless networks. A couple people did it at the same time. It's kind of one of those things which is eminent. But in case you hadn't figured it out, don't ever put anything else in your wireless network segment except for the wireless APs and the wireless clients. Because they will be, you can pull them off, you can ARP spoof and pull everything out into the wireless network. I mean, like, rule number 1 of wireless networking, APs, wireless clients, router. That's it. No other desktops, no workgroup servers, none of that crap. Whatever. All these bad network architectures can be given up because all you have is layer 3 protection. You're not protecting yourself. Even if the layer 3, that first router is a firewall and it's really pissed off about doing VPNs and whatever, this stuff can still happen. Okay? So because of that, I really don't think it's a good idea. Layer 2, it's a bit better. All right? So you have all this disaster dealing with the alphabet soup of what EAP method you want to use and all this crap, but it prevents a lot of attacks against the client and the infrastructure. Again, if your client software is hokey, people turn off certificate checking, you're going to get in trouble. But if you're leaking STP out, at least it's encrypted with the shared static key, And there's not a lot of information coming out, so it takes a long time if you're going to try to do an attack against that to decrypt it. So, stupid network tricks that you've played, like leaking all this information out, will at least be protected by layer 2 security, okay? And like the previous 40-odd slides would say, it's still not bulletproof, but it's certainly a good maneuver. Protecting both is a lot of work. I mean, a lot of work. Because invariably, with both, you're talking about a PKI. Like, woohoo, there's nothing more I love than dealing with PKI. Like, My Mac and I, like, we've just given up on anything that's PKI relevant whatsoever. Like, you know, I go to places, they're like, oh, you want to get on a wireless network? We'll get you a certificate. I'm like, no, I think I'll just use my GPRS or EVDO connection. Thanks. I don't think I've used a public hotspot in a year and a half. I've completely gone over to the dark side and used the cellular networks. And I'm a better person for it. I'm more complete. Further, I don't fear it. Like, I could open up my laptop right now and just go to town using it, and I'm more worried about the Bluetooth link from that thing to my phone than I am about the GPRS connection out to the internet. Because if somebody is here and they're spoofing a cell site, oh man, like, you got mad foo. Like, I will buy you a round, buddy. So, configuration. Don't screw it up, okay? The cost of failure is amazingly high. If you screw up your own internal wired network, the cost of failure is usually an outage, delays, performance problems, whatever. Screw up your wireless configuration, the cost of failure is getting owned, right? That's a big switch, you know? That's a different model altogether, all right? So you need to be very careful. How many people practice what they consider to be good configuration management? Right. Man, my soapbox just popped up out of the stage. I'm going to get up on it now. Actually, I'm going to wait a couple slides. Configuration management and low-level... I'll get to it in a minute. I'm getting all teary-eyed. Don't screw up your client configuration. And this doesn't just go for you, the guys running the enterprises. This goes for your users. Now, that's easy to do. Stop the user from screwing up their own machine. ... Profit. I mean... It's a phenomenally difficult problem, you know. If I've got, you know, whatever, a 2-star or an EVP or whatever land I deal with, I got some really high up, and he says, you know what, I'm going on the road, and I need to blow open my wireless connection so I can connect to my Aunt May's wireless thing in Santa Clara, and then go down to, you know, wherever and do something else. You know what? I'm going to do it because I like my job. But his box will probably, you know, at some point be under some poking and prodding and potentially get owned. Especially because people like EVPs and 2-stars are targets, right? Wireless, I mean, as much as it doom and gloom and wireless security is this evil thing and, man, we need to protect everybody.
Who cares about grandma?
Yeah, like, I've said this before. I ran a wide open wireless network at my house with all my machines in the same subnet, and like unpatched FreeBSD boxes and unpatched Windows boxes.
Grandma doesn't even have any good MP3s.
Yeah. For 2.5 years, and not a damn thing happened. I broadcast my physical location on the internet. Like, Beetle and I were involved in the group doing community wireless networking. We had databases that said, this is where we are.
6 people in 3 years joined my network.
It's unbelievable. The one problem I had is someone was using my network, and he calls me up the next day and says, hey, I was back behind your house using your network at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the cops stopped. And it took me half an hour to explain to him what I was doing and that I wasn't breaking into your house. And, all right. But other than that, man, nothing happened. So people are targets, man. Like, some people that you have to, I mean, we get paid to protect networks, and we also get paid to protect people, right? I mean, there are people that are resources to our companies, to our organizations, and we need to keep them secure for them shooting themselves in the foot. And that's really hard to do with wireless clients. Wow, that was a tangent. So, and again, bad code, what you gonna do? It's really, I didn't like actually bounce to that though, so. You know, anything, ESP, God, I was not right when I did these slides. I think it's supposed to be EAP. Bad code will be the death of you, you know? Like, if you could. Okay, well, they were there, I guess. So, securing the client or securing the infrastructure, again, if your client's not near your infrastructure, you're not going to do anything to protect him. Standing in this room, I can't protect attacks against my wireless network and my wireless client back in Maryland. Further, my wireless network in Maryland can't do anything to protect my laptop right now. All right? So all the money you spend on these products to put in your enterprise, to protect yourself from rogues and attacks, whatever, great. I'm serious, great. That is good. That needs to get done. It needs to happen more. It needs to get more sophisticated. But the moment that client leaves, you're in trouble. Further, there are conditions where this stuff still doesn't do everything it needs to do, right? These clients are still vulnerable even when they're near your enterprise. You know, things run real quick in the electronic world. Mike was talking about yesterday. He's beating around with this, heap cleaning thing on these Cisco devices, and magic would occur every minute and kick him out. But a minute is a lot of time. If I've got a minute or two to launch a rogue attack and compromise one of your clients, load malicious code and get the hell out of there, man alive. Like, your security guy that was outside having a smoke and got the phone call is nowhere near me by the time I've left. All right? These things can happen really quick. So we need client software that can defend and detect against rogue AP attacks. We released Hotspot DK, yada, yada, yada. At the time, there was no capability for rogue detection. As Beetle said, you had some signal-to-noise graphs you could look at. Great. That was horrible. Today, we're still not much better. Air Defense Mobile has some things that will protect them. There's some other odds and ends that are out there. I'm not a big product guy. I'm sorry. If people want to ask, well, what products are there? I've read them. I can't remember. So, but ultimately, there are footprints when this happens, right? Like, you have asinine amounts of signal to noise. Things that don't make sense. Like, unless that thing is shoved up the rear end of your laptop, you would never see that much signal on a daily basis. If I see, rogues popping up on my own, or I see 2 T-Mobile MAC addresses, I don't know how many Starbucks have 2 APs in them. They're not very big. I'm usually like this, waiting for my espresso, trying to crowd in between everybody. So if I see 2 right next to each other, that might be suspicious. There are things that you can look for to try to defend against. So, man, this gets really frustrating for me really quick. Further, the protocols that are out there, 802.11, God bless it, because it's made a lot of people really happy. But ultimately, the protocol was not designed to withstand the threat model that's deployed in, right? There's no authentication on the core management protocols. Management frames are not authenticated. And beyond that, just in general, it's not really designed in a way to have you have any degree of assurance of who you're connecting to. So you end up bootstrapping all this EAP stuff on top of it, which doesn't really scale across enterprises. If just because you have TTLS and doing all this stuff in your enterprise doesn't mean that Starbucks has it or your neighbor has it or whatever. So everyone's deploying their own point solutions, and the core protocol just isn't designed to help it. So it's up to the software vendors to look for these mistakes, look for the artifacts, and it starts to sniff like an IDS all of a sudden. Like, you're looking for these signatures of what's going on. So what we're working on with Hotspot Defense Kit V2 is basically the clients in V1, they were looking for attacks against themselves, if you will. They were looking for stupid layer 2 tricks against them. In V2, what we're looking for are stupid layer 2 tricks that are just going on in general. If I'm in downtown Baltimore, how many people have been in downtown Baltimore? Okay, how many people have been 2 blocks outside of downtown Baltimore and feared for their lives? Right. Okay. If I'm 2 blocks outside of downtown Baltimore and I hear a gunshot, just because I don't get hit doesn't make me any less nervous about it. Wireless is the same way. If we're sitting here and there's attacks going on around us, just because they're not affecting us right now, probably isn't the best idea to continue to do what we were doing. It's one of those times you shut the radio off, enjoy your coffee, grab the paper, go home. Or shut the radio off and you fire up your EVDO card or something like that. But ultimately, what we're trying to do with V2 is make an environmental monitor that's just sitting around kind of doing your normal things. The things that your enterprise IDS system would be doing anyway, your enterprise wireless IDS system is doing to protect your enterprise, well, when your client's mobile, they got to do the same damn things. They have to do the same things to protect them, right? And as a community, we need to be aware of that. We need to have that kind of mindset. Further, we really need to, well, I'm running out of time, so I'm not gonna belabor that point. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, user interface is key. Users, as Beetle likes to say, are kind of the problem. So the interface is a red ball and a green ball. When the ball turns red, it's bad. When it's green, it's good. Okay? So I'm of the opinion that that's how an IDS should work. IDS is in like enterprise systems. Like if you're paying a guy to sit in a NOC and watch an IDS, the screen should be red when it's bad and green when it's good. Like not bars of red and green and whatever. Like, is someone in my enterprise or not? Tell me. If the answer is no, it's green. All right? I can look at other things, but what I really want to know is the high level of green and red, binary answer. Users, they really need that. So I expect in the next month we'll have it done for Windows and Mac. I apologize for not having to complete it here. Turns out I dropped out of college after a really bad experience with CS over a number of years and some yelling contests with my professors. It was glorious. And I'm a really crappy coder. So when I tried to do this again, I realized what a crappy coder I was. I had to teach myself to code for like the 5th time in my life. So it may not be the most secure code, just so you know. What? Blame the user. It was the user's fault. When did you stop beating your users? Wow, jokes have been terrible today. One last thing, secure versus security operations. And I don't have nearly the time to spend on this that I'd like to, so I'm just going to gloss over it. But the general concept here is you need to think about your operational security in a structured fashion. It's not what's buzzword compliant. It's not what the vendors are selling you that's cool and what all the kids are doing, right? I have been in enterprises, we had no money, we had no IDSs, no honeypots, none of that. And we had millions of dollars of revenue going through us, but we had damn good patch management, damn good configuration management, damn good operational procedures, sketchy firewalls, and no software security. 2 years and we never got owned. All right? That's the stuff at the bottom of this thing, and you can argue where these things go, and I'm happy to argue about this because, man, I've gotten in some fights about this thing. But the stuff at the bottom people don't normally consider as, you know, the core, like what security is. Like, we want to talk about IDSs because it's awesome, and we want to talk about honeypots because they're fun and sexy. Well, really what you want to talk about is patch management and configuration management. And until you have that figured out, you don't have any right in the world deploying an IDS. Pardon my, holy war. I'm going to go off on this more at DEF CON, so if you really want to have some fun, come to that, because I'm also going to tell you why I don't think it's a great idea to deploy Linux. So that may be my last day on Earth, so if there's anything you want to tell me, between now and then, just come see me and tell me and, get it off my chest. So we're looking for new interns at the Shmoo Group. So anyway, is this where I turn it back over to you?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry.
And you can read through your own slides, but I mean, we go over some examples like of networks that you should have. It basically comes down to secure segregation and management of your access points. And then, once you actually get to a work environment, whoa, the diagram gets really complicated. It gets a little bit more complicated than all the other networks. And so you actually have to work. And oh my God, we'd actually have to work to get security done, right? If you want to learn more about, the wireless stuff that you can do on Windows and all the little things that you can roll for your own to actually do rogue access point detection from like one central location on like your domain, you can do it. And there's like presentation from TourCon 2004, Wireless Weapons of Mass Destruction. You can find it, Google it, download it, be happy with it. I mean, this is an SSID scanner, 17 lines of VB script. Throw it in as like a login, script for like your users or whatever, so that they're not running NetStumbler, because it doesn't really take NetStumbler app to actually go and find out what SSIDs are there and report them back to the actual domain. So it's not that difficult stuff.
This may be the one legitimate use of VB script, by the way.
It was painful to learn it. Yeah. In summary, implementations versus acronyms, okay? EAP, VPN, they all sound great, right? But how are you deploying it? How are you configuring it? Configuration management of user wireless profiles. I mean, you need to rule with an iron fist or die when it comes to actual configuration management of wireless profiles for your users. And you have to decide, where is it right to actually Wi-Fi? Is it applicable to every environment? You know what? Everybody's just like, oh, it'd be great if we had a wireless network for this. It'd be great if we had a wireless network for this. It'd be great if we... You know what? Stop for a minute and actually think that you have the right to say, no, wireless doesn't belong in this particular area, okay? Maybe it just belongs in your conference room. Maybe it just belongs in your conference room on a dedicated line going straight to Google. And that's all people should be doing with your wireless in your environment. And the rest of it, on the wire, baby. And wireless threats versus how much money you're actually spending on it. We're up here and we're screaming about wireless and wireless security, blah, 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 and how you need to actually, pay attention to it. But, how much money you're going to throw at it and how much of a sinkhole is it going to become in terms of your overall security budget. And at the end of the day, people are coming in through your front door all the time on the internet side. Thousands of attacks per day. And meanwhile, there may be like, let's assume there's one person per day that comes up to your wireless network and tries to attack it. 365 intruders a year. 10,000 attacks every day on your internet connection. Where are you going to spend your money? Where are you going to start looking? You need to start thinking about that.
I love it when he invalidates the entire talk with that sentence.
Exactly right.
And really, this isn't that big of a deal. Don't worry about it. Here are some links. AirSnarf, obviously. Rogue Squadron, you can go there. There's firmware.
you can download. There's the actual code, so if you want to like modify it or whatever, you can download. Hotspot Defense Kit, there's versions of it already, but there's newer versions coming out. And then obviously, you know, on the next time, and you'll probably see us, and the next con you should be looking at going to, Tourcot. Woo! Woohoo! Thank you very much. We're out of time.